John Gray, the pastor, the preacher, the traveling evangelist, the guy from TV, the person everybody celebrates, was a private failure. Every principle I'd ever taught came back to haunt me. Every single thing I'd ever believed about myself, relationships, and God walked right out the door behind my wife. That singular transformational moment was the result of many moments I'd lived in my 44 years, moments when I was unable and maybe even unwilling to see the heart of the person I'd promised to love, honor, and protect. So much so that she'd rather go back to the home of her childhood than live another day with me. To the world, though, I was a magnificent success. I traveled around the world speaking at all the big Christian conferences. I preached at the largest church in America. And yet every single day, I was dying on the inside. I was afraid to confront the real issues of my life and ill-equipped to handle the responsibilities of being a husband and a father. On top of that, I was unwilling to seek help from those who I knew could be trusted. I allowed the voice of skepticism to convince me that I could protect myself from the blunt force trauma wrought by my choices. Beyond the sting of my wife's words and the silence that followed, I was left with the reality that what people knew of me was about to change. Everything that I ever said, the monument of words I built, was going to come crashing down. And you know what I felt? Not fear, not shame, not even guilt. I felt utter, unequivocal relief. Finally, the man who had been living two lives in one body would be able to come out from the shadows and declare, "This is me. This is John Gray." My wife was right, you know. I had abandoned her in the middle of our marriage to nurse, build a monument to, and celebrate me. She should be glad that I chose her, I thought. Something was very wrong with me. The time for excuses and blame was finally done. I found myself arguing with God. "You're all-knowing and all-powerful. I prayed to you," I would say. "I asked you to deliver me from these habits, from these thoughts, from these things. I asked you to help me, and you didn't." I found myself placing blame elsewhere. "I didn't have a father. You were never there, and neither was he. Oh yeah, and my wife, she doesn't understand. She's not a man. She doesn't do what I do." I was the king of deflection. In my mind, my failures were everyone else's fault. I refused to face anything that would cause me discomfort for very long. If I sensed discomfort, I would change the temperature. If things got too hot, I'd leave. If it got too cold and I felt exposed, I'd layer up. I layered up with comedy. Get someone laughing and you can generally deflect any arrows heading your way. For a little while, at least. The worst was when I used my gift to redirect something God wanted to challenge me on. Because I have a gift of discernment, I can always spot when someone else is going through. A classic tactic of mine would be to read someone else's mail before they could dig into mine. That way, whatever they came to tell me would be lost in the reality of their own humanity. In other words, before someone could come sweeping around my front porch, they better check their whole house. In my mind, I set the rules. I set the boundaries, and no matter who you were, if you stepped out of bounds, that very cold part of me that had been fostered over years of being rejected and laughed at in the back of buses on the way to school, that protective casing I created over my emotions and heart would kick in. I knew how to keep the word of God, the people of God, and even the voice of God out. And I would pat myself on the back for being a survivor. Yeah, I may not be perfect, but look at you. I may not be doing what I need to do, but look over there. Look at what he's not doing. That's how gifted men often never heal, grow, or mature. They always have a trick up their sleeves to make people stop challenging them to do exactly those things. When you're gifted and talented, and your gift has become a commodity, people don't often confront you. Sometimes it's because they need you in some capacity. Other times it's because they are fascinated by or desire you. All of